Well, it is my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker today. Logan Ray is a lifetime resident of Ephraim. He was born in Mount Pleasant, Utah as the fifth of 6 kids. Logan's parents, Gary Ray and Nancy Montgomery, met at BYU and were self-employed, owning several businesses here in the Ephraim area. They ran Skyline Auto here in Ephraim and Piccadilly Enterprises in Mount Pleasant. And I'm curious, what is Piccadilly?
Piccadilly is a food processing plant.
Food processing, okay.
So some of you might be familiar with like an Old English chip, or it's like a substitute to a French fry.
So like Piccadilly chips.
Piccadilly chips.
Did they like create Piccadilly chips, or was it already a thing?
The Piccadilly restaurants were going where they did a fish and chip restaurant.
Okay.
And they were part of that, and they decided what they wanted to do was bring the Piccadilly chip to the market, so they separated that from the Piccadilly restaurant.
Cool. Okay. So that was Piccadilly Enterprises. During his youth, Logan worked at both of the family's businesses. He graduated from Manti High School and attended 2 semesters at Snow College, but quickly realized that he was not cut out for school. He met his wife, Margaret Julander, who's originally from Elsinore, Utah, while she was attending Snow. They were married in December 2000 and have 4 sons. James is currently serving a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and will be returning home this coming March. Jesse graduated from Manti High School last year. He's currently working with one of the local plumbers in the area. Jacob will turn 16 this month. He attends Manti High School and works at Ace Hardware. And Joey is 10 years old. He loves facts and can tell you everything you need to know about dinosaurs. Logan loves his boys with all his heart. He believes that families are forever. He has served faithfully in many callings in his local church, and Logan serves the community by offering his time to coaching his boys' sports teams in their youth. He supports and loves this community, and he's very excited for the opportunity that his family has to own and operate Ephraim Ace Hardware. So please welcome Logan Ray. Out. You can use this mic if you want.
Okay. I think I'll just stand here, and maybe if I can talk loud enough moving around, I'll be okay. Forgive me for being late. I am from Ephraim, and I remember when the library was the building next door, so I'm wandering through the halls of the library over there and not finding the class. So forgive me. I don't know if I could use that as an excuse for your class or not, Mr. Tanner, or not, but I try to use it. So I will admit that I am super nervous. I have never shared my life story of how I became the owner of the hardware store in town, but I think most of my story comes back from, I had a previous business which was a steel fabrication business. So that's given me most of my experiences throughout my life, because Ace has only been open for about 4 months now. Just as kind of a quick recap on me, I'm from here in Ephraim. I've had several different jobs, and each of these jobs have given me experience in my life. When I was young, I had a lawn mowing job. My father owned several different pieces of real estate, so I would actually drive the riding lawnmower from one place to the other, and I was always mowing lawns and stuff. So this is it started me out in my youth as being of learning that working hard has payoffs, and so anyways. I also had kind of a part-time gig when I was about 15 years old, where I worked for a company here in town that sold healthcare products. There was a lady that would do a late night radio show and then would sell all these different healthcare and vitamins, and I would work in that. I worked there to package up those products and stuff like that. I also worked at Skyline Auto, which was a used car dealership that my father owned. It actually was on the same property that the Ace Hardware building is at now. So we're glad that that property could still stay in the family. There also at that auto dealership, there was also a body shop that I spent a lot of time working on. And I'll tell you what, that's one place where I learned that doing body work was not for me either. It was boring, it was hard, it was repetitive. I sanded and I sanded and then I sanded and then I sanded. It was just not for me. We talked a little bit about Piccadilly Enterprises. I spent a lot of time in my youth working at Piccadilly. Throughout my high school careers, I did work study and would go over to Piccadilly and do the cleanup. I worked in the cells there. I was always going out to food shows and everything else. Piccadilly was a food processing plant where we manufactured a potato product. So we'd bring in Idaho potatoes and we would cut them up, steam cook them, batter them, we'd freeze dry them, and then we'd sell them to different stores such as like the malt shop here in town, or we'd work with like Cisco, Nicholas, and those types of companies to sell that product. And we'd go all over the Western United States selling that product. My first venture in being self-employed was right after I was married. I opened up a company that was called Skyline Soda Blasting. It was kind of a new concept at the time where you would use baking soda as a stripping agent to strip cars to prep them for paint and stuff like that. You used an air compressor and this baking soda, and that's what you used. The bulk of my life was at Dax Welding. I spent over 12 years there, and I've learned lots of things from that. After selling out of Dax, I started I was selling storage sheds, and I had some property that was actually, I had bought the family property from my parents and was planning on doing something there. I didn't know what I was gonna do, but I leased out that property. And then for a little while, I moved down to Christensen Arms. When I started at Christensen Arms was doing about $30 million a year. And my very first day of work was with the management team, and we were doing year-end planning where we were planning out for the next year. They had set a goal to double the size of the business because they wanted to do $60 million that next year. My part of work at Christensen Arms was I was managing a swing shift crew there. So I had about, I think there was about 25 to 30 employees that I was managing there at Christensen Arms. And I'll tell you what, we got $59 million that year. So I mean, that was a pretty good growth. And I still keep in really good contact with those guys, and they've doubled the size of that business again. So that's been an awesome business to be a part of because I learned a lot of different things. I didn't like the swing shift job. That wasn't for me. I didn't like working the nights, so I moved from there to a company here locally that is called CO Buildings, and I was a salesman for those guys. My dream after selling out of Dax was to do something that was family oriented. That's what I really wanted to do, and I'll kind of get into that a little bit more, but that's what led me to ACE. So I never really thought I was going to be an entrepreneur. I guess maybe first of all, out of all of you guys in here, who actually wants to own their own business? Maybe by a show of hands. Okay. Who has an idea already of what you want to do? Great. Okay. Well, owning your own business is fun. It's exciting, but there's a lot of hard work. Who's taking this class because they want an easy A? There you go. Being an entrepreneur is not an easy A. Okay. It's not an easy A. The thing is when you start your own business, and I'll talk more about this a little bit later, but there's a lot of things that happen where it's no longer you're just thinking about yourself. You're not just clocking in, clocking out, going home, and the end of the day, that's it. It's on your mind 24/7. Sometimes you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and think, crap, I got to get this done tomorrow, and I got to get this done tomorrow, and I actually have to have it done by 8 o'clock in the morning. So anyways, it is a lot of work. My father was an entrepreneur. He's from Montana, and he met my mother at BYU. He graduated with a degree in engineering, and they moved to California, where my mom was from. They lived in California for quite a few years. My dad worked in the engineering department at Ryan Aircraft, which designed missiles and all kinds of other things there. My dad decided that he didn't want to be in California. That's not where he wanted to raise his family. So before I was born, he moved to Utah, and he started up a couple of different companies. One of the first things that he started was a company called Skyline Dairy. He would drive around and actually deliver milk door to door. So I can honestly say my dad was the milkman. So he also started a company called Sandpitch Rentals, where he bought some properties throughout town and in some of the neighboring towns where he would do rental businesses, and that's where I spent a lot of time mowing lawns and stuff when I was a kid. But some of the businesses that he's most famous for was Skyline Auto, which was a used car dealership here in town. My dad always had a passion for old cars, and he loved cars. So I spent a lot of time going to auto auctions and spending time buying cars and learning a lot about cars. The other one that he's well known for was Piccadilly Enterprises, which was a food processing plant. My dad was a salesman. He loved people, and he could talk to people all the time. He could have a story. He could come up to a complete stranger and be able to talk to them about anything. And I always told myself I was never going to be a salesman. But throughout my careers that I've had, every time, that's where I've landed. I fell into being a salesman. I fall into being around people too. So in my youth, I did not like school. School was not for me. I think the only reason that I passed high school was because I had some teachers that said, I don't want you back in my class again. In middle school, I actually had a science teacher that, bless his heart, I love the man now, but at the time I was not a very good person, and I went into his class and would annoy him all the time. And one day I walked into his class and he said, Mr. Ray, I'm not in the mood for your shit today, go to the office. And that was it. So anyways, sorry if I swore. There were a few classes that I didn't like, which was obviously geography, English, all of those. Some of these classes that I did like was my math class. I really enjoyed my math class, and I actually enjoyed my woodshop class, and I had a drafting/engineer class. Those were classes where I had hands-on. I loved to be around working with my hands. You could give me anything, and I would tear it apart, see how it worked, put it back together, and try to improve on the idea. So, in high school, we had a career day. And I had built in woodshop, I had built a drafting table, and then in my drafting class, I had actually drawn up some plans for a house, and I had them out for a career day. And my English teacher came through and was looking at these projects, and she asked my shop teacher, is this the same Logan Ray that's in my class? Because I just didn't care for those classes. I just realized if I put my heart to it, I could succeed, but if I didn't have my heart in it, I didn't care and I didn't try. So I self-diagnosed myself later in life with ADD. I feel like I have attention deficit disorder. I get squirreled all the time. I added to that myself OSS, which means to me, oh, something shiny. If I see something shiny, I'm over there and I've forgotten what I was doing. So forgive me if I get off topic. I attended Snow College for 2 semesters and I failed all my classes. It was not for me. So I entered into the working world. At this time in my life, I was about your age. I was only focusing on myself. I was only thinking about what I wanted to do that day. I had no long-term goals. I had a really good friend by the name of Alex. Alex and I were inseparable. We enjoyed jeeping and would spend lots of time in Moab. I bought an old CJ5 at this time and started to fix it up, but I didn't have a lot of money because I was poor, so I was unable to put a lot of money into it, and so it just kind of sat. And if you listen to the whole story, you'll see how this Jeep comes back into play later on. But Alex and I were in the process of making plans to travel around the world. That's what we were going to do with our life. We were going to travel around the world with only what we could fit in our backpacks, and we were going to hitchhike from here to there until we made it all the way around the world. But since I was a procrastinator at the time, this dream never became a reality for me. I met my beautiful wife, Margaret, on the front steps of our home. let me see where I'm at. I had grown up just a little bit and decided that buying a house would be a good long-time investment. As I mentioned, I had only grown up just a little bit, so I was hanging out on the front porch with a few friends, and a girl that I knew stopped by. And she told my wife, Margaret, who was with her, she said, "Stay in the truck. These boys are people that you don't want to hang out with." Well, I'm glad she didn't listen, and I found out where she lived and went and visited with her. I actually showed up at her house the next day, right after she was being dropped off from another date. So Margaret is an amazing wife, mother, and a business partner. I was told once that kids can come at any time, but after that, the first kid can come at any time, but after that, it takes 9 months. Margaret and I were married in December, and James was born 4 months later, in April. My best friend Alex was my best man at our wedding. He'd always been by my side. Alex was killed in a boating accident 3 months after Margaret and I were married. The officer that was working on the case read and saw in his cell phone that he had been calling me several different times. So Alex was at Lake Havasu at the time. So the officer called me and told me what was happened. And I had to do the hardest thing that I've ever done in my entire life. I had to tell his parents that their boy was not coming home. Alex never had the chance to meet my kids, and I miss that. But anyways, Alex is what led me to my career at Dax Welding. Dax Welding is a steel fabrication company that's located over by Fountain Green. Alex was also my cousin. My Uncle Dave and Alex had started this welding shop as just kind of a farm shop. It was just a small little, do miscellaneous farm work and fabrication work. The name Dax comes from Dave and Alex. After Alex's passing, I went to work with Dave to kind of help him keep the business alive. It was just the two of us. I worked with him for years. I worked for him for about a year. And we actually expanded the clientele and brought in new business and did a lot of improvements and changes there. Dave made me an offer to where it was easy for me to buy into that business with very little money down. I worked with Dave for about another year, and we started expanding, and we hired another employee, and things were going really well. Our employee found a better paying job, and it was back to just Dave and I. Unfortunately, Dave's health was poor, and so it was hard for him to work doing the stuff that we were doing. We were doing steel work, we were working with heavy sheets of material, steel plates and stuff like that, and so it was hard for him to do this stuff. Because of the nature of the business and Dave's poor health, he made me an offer to buy him completely out. But because of the nature of all the hard work, I felt like it would be worthwhile to have a business partner that was invested in the business, that could help with the day-to-day things, that wanted to be there and not just want to work until they found something different to do. I had a good friend that I had met at church. He was a hard worker and he had a young family like myself. I was able to put the skin into the game to get us to purchase out my uncle, and Scott and I entered into a business relationship where we were actually 50-50 partners. Over the course of the next 12 years, Scott and I grew the business from the two of us to over 10 employees. We were manufacturing products and selling them all over the country. Even some of them that have gone outside of the country. We have stuff that went to South Africa and some other places. Some people say that partnerships are hard. I'd have to agree with them. Scott and I were in business for over 12 years. I think the number one key thing for a partnership is communication. And the second thing that I think is the second thing is defining your responsibilities and being flexible with what you do and your expectations so that you guys can get along together. During our growth, we wanted to make the business profitable. We invested a lot of money back into the business to keep expanding its capabilities. We both lived off of minor incomes, which was still good for this area, but we put lots of money back into the business to continue to grow the business. So for the first few years of its infancy, we hardly brought anything home. We naturally fell into what we were good at. I managed the office and did the interactions with the customers. I organized our workloads, I purchased products, and I managed our AR and our accounts receivable and our accounts payable. Scott managed our shop. He made sure that the employees were lined out with their workloads and kept up with the quality control and managed the day-to-day affairs of our production facility. Like I said, when I was about 18 to 24, I was self-centered, only thinking about myself. As a business owner, you have the responsibility of your employees. You need to learn to be selfless. Not only do you have your spouse and your family to look after, but you've also got your employees and their families to look after also. They're looking to you and they're counting on you. I was once told by a good friend that human resource and people management is easy. The only hard thing about human resources and people management is when you put the human into the equation. I've learned that money is not necessarily a motivator for employees to do a better job or to be engaged in the business. Employees like recognition. They like to share in the company's success. They like to feel needed and respected. You give them some reins and let them take control of things, and you'll get more out of them than giving them an extra $2 or $3 an hour. Even if they have to fail, they'll learn more. Some of the other things that I've learned across the time was that you surround yourself with good people. Henry Ford said, surround yourself with people that know more than you. One does not need to be able to do it all. One does need to know how to get the task at hand accomplished. And I think that's the biggest thing that I've learned in being an entrepreneur is that the people that you surround yourself with, if you give them responsibilities and you give them the trust that they can do it, they'll surprise you and they'll succeed. And you'll learn in your entrepreneur world, or as you're growing, you'll learn that there's people that are A players, B players, and C players. And you'll learn who those A players are, and you'll be able to they'll be able to take you and help you excel and succeed. So my relationship with Scott worked out really well for several years. But ultimately, we grew apart. And the biggest thing that helped us, the biggest thing that grew us apart was our communication with each other. We got to the point where we didn't talk with each other hardly at all. We both had goals for the company, and most of the time they were aligned and headed the same direction. But our communication between each other kind of became inactive completely. We would actually ask the employee to tell the other person, hey, can you talk about this or can you do that? I don't know if any of you have ever played the game where you sit in a circle and one person whispers to one and it goes all the way around, and by the time it gets back to you, what you said is not what come back to you. Well, that was what was happening with us. So out of the two of us, I was probably definitely the most passive one between the two of us, and Scott is very demanding and bold. That's why we fell into our different respective roles at the decks. But anyways, I was up the mountain deer hunting when I received a text message from Scott stating that he wanted to dissolve our partnership. That night I told my wife that I needed to talk to her about something that was going to change our lives forever. And it did change our lives forever. But to fast forward just a little bit, Scott and I went back and forth on how we were going to divide up the company and what we were going to do to divide up the company. But because of our poor communication skills and our built-up anger between each other, there were things said that offended each other. And our relationship even drew further apart. To this day, I don't talk to Scott. I feel bad about that. We've actually served together in church callings, and the topics that we are there talking about, we'll talk about that, but that is the only type of conversation that I have with him to this day. So some of you might be asking, why then did you leave Dax Welding and sell out? And I'll tell you what, I believe in personal revelation, and my wife and I had prayed about it, and we decided that for the business and for our future, leaving Dax was the direction that we wanted to go. It was hard because we had grown this business for over 12 years. We had seen it. It was just like a kid. So we had watched it develop. We'd watched it grow, and so it was hard to let it go. For the first little while after selling Dax, I was depressed. I was in a dark state in my mind where I didn't know what I had done. But then at the same time, I knew that the direction I wanted to go was family oriented. I wanted something that was a family-owned business that could become a legacy for our family. I am very family oriented. So I decided at the time that I had this old CJ5 Jeep that was sitting in the garage that I wanted to get rid of. So I put it up for sale, and the person that came down and bought the Jeep was from another Ace Hardware store up north. And so that's how I got introduced to Ace, was selling an old Jeep that I'd had sitting around for 20-something years. He told me about Ace Hardware and how they enjoyed working at Ace Hardware, how it was a family-oriented place. My wife and I went to a convention, and it was a way different experience at that convention than any other convention that I've ever been at, because there was kids there was fun things going on, there was interactive. The store had stuff for the wives, it had stuff for the guys, it had stuff for the kids and everything else. So this is what drove us to say this is what the type of a business that we want to be involved with. Ace Hardware is a co-op owned business, meaning that you buy in basically a membership of it. It's not a franchise like a McDonald's where they give you all the guidelines and you just operate the business. The co-op, we can do what we want to do at the business. We can bring in products that we want. We can sell products that we want. We can make the decisions. We can stay open as late as we want or open as early as we want. We can make these decisions. Being a co-op owned business, we buy in a share of the co-op. So we have yearly dues that we pay to Ace Hardware that are shares, but then every product that we bring into our store has a percentage on it that goes back to the co-op. At the end of the year, whatever money Ace Hardware corporate did not use for managing the day-to-day affairs of the corporate get sent back out to us as a dividend. And that's paid through based off the number of dollars that we spent buying product from the store. Our corporate management team is set up of about 75% non-Ace store owners. And the reason they do this is so that it is a non-bias management decisions. They do have some store owners, some quite large store owners that are part of the management team at Ace. So, about 10 minutes? Okay. So, No, you're good. You're good. You're good. I was thinking about some of the questions that were to be able to stimulate, and it was, what is success? And to me, success is being able to have my family involved in my business. I don't care to have a multi-million-dollar business and be the richest person in Ephraim or Utah or whatever. I care to have something that my family can be involved in. And I think that's the biggest thing that's drove Margaret and I to Ace Hardware, is because each of our kids come in there and it feels like home. All of our employees that are there feel comfortable and like home there. And so that's what we really enjoy about owning the store. We've got lots of things that we need to learn, because I have never been in the hardware business, but I understand a lot about it because I've always been a hands-on type person. We've got lots of things that we need to learn about trainings and everything else. But that's the coolest thing about us joining in with a brand name such as Ace, is there's a lot of trainings that Ace provides that we can utilize and use. So that's part of what drove us to the Ace Hardware thing. I've talked a lot. I've told a story that I don't know if any of you will learn anything from it, but I want to ask, first of all, does any of you have any questions? Yeah.
What's been a big motivator for you to pursue business? Why do you like being an entrepreneur as opposed to being in more traditional business roles?
That's a good question, and I think I've done both jobs where I've checked in at 8 o'clock in the morning and checked out at 5. And even in a job where I checked in at 8 and left at 5, I was always worried about what was going on, if this or that or this needed to be done. And I think that that's just part of my character of wanting to be able to succeed to the best that I can in my business. So that's been the biggest drive for me, is knowing that I have control over all of that and can make those decisions. So if I'm going to be up at night all the time, I just as well be getting paid for it, and I just as well be enjoying and being able to make those decisions. So, yeah.
I was wondering, what's your view on debt, and have you ever gone into debt for to buy into any of these companies or to start a company?
That's a really good question. So my view on debt, personal debt, I try to avoid personal debt as much as possible. I've been in debt for a home, but that is what I like to stay away from everything else from there. I've done car loans and stuff like that, but it's been very short-term stuff. As far as a business goes, even with DAX, we really focused hard on bringing the business out of debt. And so my take on debt is to stay away from it as much as possible. At Ace Hardware, we are actually a debt-free company. I've put all of my hard-earned money into Ace. I have a business partner, which I entered into another partnership, that has put money into it, and so we do not have any debt at Ace Hardware. So, any other questions?
So how were you able to build Ace it was all your savings and your business partner's investment, or?
Correct, yes. So in my sale of DAX, I received some money from my sale of DAX, and we've put that away, basically, to start doing our next venture. While I put that away and was trying to figure out, that's when I had a couple of these other jobs where I was working for Christensen Arms and CO Buildings, and at the same time, we lived off of whatever we could live off of and continue to put money away. So, yeah. Any other thoughts? Yeah.
So what are your bigger plans for Ace, or the next big thing for you? Like, how do you plan ahead what you want to do?
That's another good question, and I don't know if I have the answer to that one yet. My goal was my goal, I kept saying, hey, we got to get this store open. Oh, we got to get this one going. We got to keep moving. So to back up just a little bit, I'm going to give you a little bit of my background in ACE. So after selling out of Dax, Margaret and I decided that we were going to open up ACE Hardware. Well, we strived to do it, but decided that we were financially unable to do it ourselves. And that's when we actually gave up our dream of the ACE. The people that we were in contact with at ACE called me and said, hey, we have a business partner that is looking at putting in an ACE Hardware here, or that is looking at getting involved in ACE, and we want to introduce you to them if you would be interested in going into a partnership with them. We've sat down with them, we've had lots of conversations, and we've defined each of our roles as far as how we are and what we do. And so that reignited our ACE Hardware experience. So the last year, our goal was just to get the store up and going. Our goal now is still a little unclear, to tell you the honest truth. So my goal right now is to make it through this first year, because we've had so many things that we've had to learn. Actually, last month, January, we order all of our product for Halloween and all of our product for Christmas. So we're ordering product for a season that we just barely came out of, but a season that we really don't know what how the public's going to react to. So right now it's kind of a professional gambling. We're just finishing up right now all of our orders for spring, which is going to be delivering in the next 2 months. So we're trying to figure out how to order all these products in for that. So like I was saying, our goal right now is just to try to survive these next couple of months. But our long-term goal is to continue to see ACE succeed and grow in the valley. We've wanted to expand out to our business to business. We want to expand our product lines and the products that we offer to be able to serve the community. Anyone else? Yeah.
Is there anything different that you do differently in this partnership to try and counter what went wrong in your last partnership?
Yes. Communication, like I was saying, is our number one goal. We've defined our roles as far as who does what. My business partner is, I'm not going to say he's a silent partner, but he's pretty much a silent partner and has given Margaret and I the reins to move forward. So we've actually got a really good relationship with them, because they were looking for a place to invest their money, and we were looking for a future to start building. So it really has worked out really well for us. But communication's the number one thing. Make sure that we've defined our roles.
I think we've got time for one more, then we got to clear out of this classroom. So.
Any other questions? I'm grateful, guys, for the opportunity to come and speak to you. I can't say that I am going to be this model entrepreneur person that you're going to look to, but I hopefully can say that I am a redneck from Ephraim, and I went to the wrong building because I thought the library was still over there. Each and every one of you are going to make mistakes in your life, but I think the most important thing is put your heart and soul into what you're doing, and you will be successful in what you're doing. So I'm grateful for this opportunity to speak with you today.
Thank you.